Remember when a film about one of the darkest mornings in American history became a love story and somehow earned $449 million? Explosions the size of buildings, 2 pilots and a nurse who couldn't decide who loved whom, and a director who had made Armageddon and decided this was the film that would finally prove he was more than that. Ben Affleck as the pilot who volunteers to fight in Europe before America enters the war. Josh Hartnett as the best friend who moves in while he's gone. Kate Beckinsale in the middle. And Michael Bay, who quit the project 4 times before he made it. Pearl Harbor, 2001. 16 facts, including the one Oscar the film won, and what it was for. Fact 1. Michael Bay quit the project 4 times, then made the film anyway. Disney kept cutting the budget. Bay kept walking. 4 separate times he formally left Pearl Harbor in protest. Bruckheimer kept pulling him back. The man who eventually directed the most expensive war film in Hollywood history had abandoned it more times than he had agreed to make it. Fact 2. Ben Affleck's usual fee was $12 million. He worked for $250,000. Disney ran out of money. The solution? Everyone cut their salary. Bruckheimer reduced his producer fee. Bay reduced his director fee. Affleck, whose going rate was $12 million, accepted $250,000 million with a back-end promise if the film succeeded. The studio that spent $6 million on the premiere, more than some films cost entirely, couldn't afford to pay its lead actor. Fact 3. Harvey Weinstein tried to block the entire casting. Disney refused to negotiate. Weinstein held a contract option on Josh Hartnett's next film. He threatened to invoke it and prevent Hartnett from making Pearl Harbor, unless Disney allowed Kate Beckinsale to complete Serendipity for Miramax first. Disney refused. Weinstein had to stand down. The casting of both leads was nearly derailed by a dispute over a romantic comedy nobody remembers. Fact 4. The film was originally designed for Matt Damon and Gwyneth Paltrow. Damon was the first choice for one of the pilots. Paltrow was in talks for the female lead. Both had scheduling conflicts and couldn't commit. The film that launched Affleck and Hartnett as the faces of a $140 million war epic was originally designed around completely different people who had better things to do. Fact 5. Bay interviewed 80 Pearl Harbor survivors, then made a love triangle anyway. Bay and Bruckheimer spent months talking to men and women who had been present on December 7, 1941. They collected accounts, photographs, and testimony. The script they produced centered on 2 fictional pilots competing for the same nurse. Bay's justification: without a love story, it would have been a documentary. The survivors had given their accounts. The film used the backdrop. Fact 6. During filming, a real vintage World War II fighter clipped a palm tree and crashed. The attack sequences used actual period aircraft, not replicas, not CGI, real planes from the early 1940s. During one take, a plane struck a palm tree and went down. The pilot survived with a broken finger. Nobody stopped production. They reset and kept filming. Fact 7. John Voight wore exact replicas of the steel leg braces Franklin Roosevelt used every day of his presidency. Roosevelt's disability was historically real and rarely depicted accurately on screen. The production sourced duplicates of the actual orthopedic hardware Roosevelt depended on. Voight wore them throughout filming. The most physically demanding aspect of playing the commander-in-chief during the worst military attack in American history was learning to stand and walk in someone else's pain. Fact 8. Roger Ebert gave Pearl Harbor 2 stars. He wrote that the film was like a toupee on a fat man. You notice the impressive parts but can't get past the problem underneath. Ebert's specific complaint: the film spent its first hour on a love triangle, then 40 minutes on one of the most devastating military attacks in American history, then another hour on the love triangle. The attack sequence, he wrote, was extraordinary. The film around it wasn't. The New York Times, Time, and the Los Angeles Times all agreed. The film earned $449 million. The audience and the critics had watched the same film and arrived at completely different conclusions. A director who quit 4 times. A lead actor who worked for 2% of his fee. A casting battle nearly lost to a romantic comedy. 80 survivors whose accounts became a backdrop. Up to here, what it cost to make the film. From here, what happened when the world saw it. Fact 9. In America, it was sold as a war film. In Japan, it was sold as a love story. It failed in both markets. Disney ran separate marketing campaigns for different territories. American audiences received patriotism and combat. Japanese audiences received the romance. 30,000 people attended the Japan premiere event. The film still underperformed there. The strongest international market turned out to be Germany, which contributed $28 million. The country the film was about, and the country it depicted as the enemy, were its two weakest territories. Fact 10. Ben Affleck absorbed the worst of Bay's behavior on set. Josh Hartnett was left alone. Hartnett later said he had a good working relationship with Bay, but added that Affleck had taken the brunt of the director's unhappiness. He didn't specify what that looked like. Affleck has never described it in detail. The film's lead actor accepted $250,000, absorbed the director's frustration for the duration of filming, and watched the finished product earn $449 million. Fact 11. One of the two real pilots who actually got airborne during the attack was still alive when the film came out. He watched it. Kenneth Taylor was 22 on December 7, 1941. He scrambled to his plane under fire and shot down between 2 and 4 Japanese aircraft, one of a handful of Americans who fought back that morning. In 2001, 60 years later, he watched a Hollywood film depict it. His verdict: a piece of trash. Over-sensationalized and completely distorted. He had been there. Fact 12. Affleck later said he had not been proud of the film. He described it as a case where the parts he had been excited about, the historical story, the attack sequences, were overwhelmed by elements he hadn't been able to control. Hartnett said he had been uncomfortable with the film's scale from the start. He had gone straight into Black Hawk Down, specifically to work on something less polished. The actor who took the smallest salary and absorbed the most difficulty on set was also the one who spoke most honestly about the result. Fact 13. Disney spent $6 million on the world premiere. It was held on an aircraft carrier anchored a few hundred meters from the USS Arizona Memorial. The Arizona still holds the remains of more than 1,000 sailors who died on December 7, 1941. Oil still seeps from the wreck to the surface of the harbor. It has never stopped. The premiere for a film about the attack was held close enough to see it. Guests arrived by boat from the carrier to the memorial and back. The event was described as spectacular. The men in the water below it had been there for 60 years. Fact 14. Pearl Harbor was released on May 25, 2001. The September 11th attacks happened 109 days later. The film's entire promotional campaign, the aircraft carrier premiere, the footage of a surprise attack on American soil, the imagery of burning ships and panicked sailors, that was built and released into a country that had not yet experienced what was coming. After September 11th, the film's images meant something different. The attack sequences that critics had called excessive were no longer hypothetical. They were prescient in ways nobody had planned. Fact 15. Doris Miller was the first black man awarded the Navy Cross. His service record still listed him as a cook. Cuba Gooding Jr. plays Dory Miller, a mess attendant who grabbed an unmanned anti-aircraft gun during the attack and fought back. He had never been trained on the weapon. The Navy awarded him the Navy Cross. They continued to assign him to kitchen duty. He was killed in action in November 1943 when his ship was torpedoed during the Battle of Makin Island. The film includes his story. The citation for his Navy Cross identified him as a mess attendant. Fact 16. 80 survivors of the actual attack had given Bay and Bruckheimer their accounts. Some of them attended a preview screening before the film was released. Kenneth Taylor, one of the pilots who actually fought back that morning, had already called the film a piece of trash. The others said less publicly what they had described in interviews: the noise, the confusion, the men who didn't get out of the water, the ones who burned. What the film gave them: Ben Affleck and Josh Hartnett arguing over the same nurse. The attack had happened to real people. The film happened to their story. They were not the same thing.